show. Appreciate it.
Thank
William,
you. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it was spur of the moment, and I just thought if you were going to be here, we might as well push the record button. If it were only that simple. So, William, you got some great news, I've heard.
Great news. What would that be? I got a lot of great news. Depends on what topic.
Well, your mom said you just came from the recruiter.
I did, yeah. So long story. I've been looking into the officer route, looking into how to develop myself as a human being and as an exceptionable man. Because I think that our goal as young men should be to push ourselves in limits that we have never before. And I was going to the recruiter here because I was interested in finding avenues to pursue myself deeper. And I think it's critical for men to step back and assess where they want their life to go, because I know too many guys who are living life in a paycheck to paycheck type of sense, like day to day, whatever happens, happens. And I'd love to inspire men in ways kind of like Charlie Kirk did. But of course, Charlie was more of a revivalist. And I've been thinking about the word progenitor a lot recently. Progenitor means to originate an artistic, intellectual, or political movement.
Right.
Right. So,
well, I shouldn't act like I knew what that word was, but now I know.
Well, my point in going with that is that there is so much opportunity right now for men to grow. Like, the competition is zero for other men out there, because I know so many guys who, even my old friends, would just, like I said, live life in this dull way. And I think with this Charlie Kirk thing that happened, which I'm sure we'll get to here in a little bit,
definitely,
that there's a huge awakening going on in a lot of ways. And I don't think we should all be Charlie Kirks exactly, but put in our own spin on it.
Right.
And finding our own avenues. And that's why I was at the recruiter today, with speaking to the National Guard about some avenues and pursuing a civilian life on the side, or as full-time as pursuing military on the side. So I guess
that's admirable.
It is admirable. Absolutely. And that's where it goes back to, who is you as a young man? How are you inputting? What's your inputs? Because we can't all just expect to be Charlie Kirk in 30 years.
Right. And you're 19, is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
But he was only 31 years old?
31, yeah.
And what I found really fascinating about Charlie, when you do some more digging, is that he started at 17 years old. He started when he was just a high schooler.
Right.
He was in meetings. If you were at the Faith and Family Freedom event the other day, you'll understand that I believe he was a businessman at that time. This gentleman he used to own a car dealership, and Charlie came walking in and pitching the whole idea of Turning Point USA to him at the age of 17. Like, what was I even doing at 17? Probably, playing soccer or video games or something. And proceeds to deliver this phenomenal message to this businessman. And the businessman ends up making a donation. And, I mean, he's got to be convincing if he's only 17 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was powerful. I mean, I think that the example is, if you're passionate and you're driven and you have good values, you can accomplish anything. And you can do that if you don't have good values. We see people that are passionate and driven about destroying our country, and they're doing a good job of it, But, he worked 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. And when I was 17, I was the junior class president. That was my first delve into politics, and I had a sit-in. I led a sit-in at 17. Imagine that, right? Me leading an event, a rally, or a sit-in. But we had this teacher or a principal come in that started taking away all our freedoms. And first it was like the snack machines, and then the ability to, we had a, like it in study hall, we could take a break for 10 minutes, get a snack, chat with our friends at the beginning. She took those away. Then if you had an A in your class, you didn't have to take the semester test, so you had open campus, you could leave. She took that away, so we sat in study hall instead. But the final thing was when she had the audacity to remove the doors from the bathroom stalls in the boys' bathroom.
Oh.
Right, right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we, me and my compadres, we got together, and first we petitioned, then we talked to administration. They didn't care. And we finally said, you know what? They can't have school without us. And so no social media, none of that was existent then, of course. So we had the rotary phone. We each called a dozen people, and the next morning we got up during study hall and went to the gym and stuck our head in homerooms along the way and said, hey, come to the gym. And before you knew it, we had, 300-400 people in the gym, 90% of the class or my classmates. And we had a list of demands, and a teacher would come in and say, get back to class or you're going to go to detention. And I would say, well, you can't put all of us in detention. And they would, the AD would come in and say, get back to class or you're not going to play in the football game. And I'd say, well, we're not going to have a football game, if you don't meet our demands. The news came, and by the end of the day, our demands were met. The doors were back on. The snack machines were plugged in. And, like within a week, our principal resigned. I mean, that's how much attention was brought to it.
Wow.
And I forgot about that.
Wow.
Until, our kids were being masked and our businesses were being shut down. And I thought, okay, what's going on here? And it kind of woke that back up for me. But that's what I was doing at 17.
But isn't that fascinating, Oliver, that it took a student to make that change and that the adults wouldn't go against the principal, go against the administration? Yeah. It was somebody like you and a group of nobodies at the school who had to make that change. And isn't that fascinating how like all revolutions are like that?
Yeah.
You truly had a revolution at that school.
Yeah, we had a revolution. We stood up and had to sit in. It was powerful. And I wondered about that during COVID when kids were being masked at school. I thought, why aren't there walkouts and sit-ins going on everywhere? I think there was in Harlan, Iowa, in Steve's district, in Representative Holt's district.
Really?
I think there was a student-led walkout or sit-in, but that's the only one I heard of. And I just can't imagine being a young person masked 8 hours a day, complete nonsense and not standing up. And I don't think we introduced you guys when we started, but we have Representative Helena Hayes, and then her son, William. And
Thank you, Oliver, for having us. This is a treat.
Yeah,
you have a wonderful place here.
Yeah, and truly, this was just like the last minute thing. I mean, I got a call from my mother like 2 hours ago, like, "Hey, William, Oliver's got a podcast. Are you interested?" Like, heck yeah, I'm interested. Get me on. I'd be stoked to be able to sit down with the legendary Mr. Bardwell himself.
Yeah, right.
Flattery.
Yeah, you're going to go big places. Well, one of the things, the opportunity to have a 19-year-old on was compelling, especially after Charlie's assassination, because he was such a huge force, such an influence. We've seen candlelight vigils across Iowa, across the nation. One of the things, we always hear is, on the far left, when there's something like this that happens, cities are burning, cars are being, caught on fire. There's all sorts of riots, and what we're seeing is uplifting in a way.
So much so much so than ever before. Like the youth, they keep saying this really is the turning point, but I think there may be some truth in that especially with that organization. So me personally, I guess I want to say, I never followed Charlie too closely until the assassination. And that's how it is with most rappers too. Nobody really listens to their music until they're in jail or they're, dead, to say it none the least.
Right.
And it was the same way with Charlie, that whole incident, that whole assassination is what made Turning Point USA what it is in only a week and a half.
Yeah.
And it's just exploded.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do want to say they were really big and influential. I mean, he traveled 300 days a year and was on college campus after college campus. They really helped get the young vote for Trump in a lot of the areas that he needed. But it has exploded 1,000-fold. We saw 100,000 people at his memorial service. We had that same day, we had a candlelight vigil that night, and it was just powerful. And we had people come up and give testimonies and here in Dallas County. But to your point, now there's that probably going to be 1,000 Charlie Kirks rise up and thousands of more in his movement. He did have a huge following on his podcast. He's written, I think, 4 or 5 books. I just ordered his last book, and it's back ordered to middle of October now. But it just, and for me, I mean, it was like a punch in the gut. And I didn't know him well. I know the Turning Point leaders here in Iowa because, Jordan and Haley, Michaela used to work with them, but they would set up booths at our events and things like that. And we always supported that, but I didn't really realize the impact and the influence that Charlie had on college students and whatnot until his death. And oddly enough, the week before, or the couple weeks before, I had been listening to his videos nonstop, and it was just odd that I had the last couple weeks before he was assassinated. I was listening to his videos, and I was talking to my wife about it, and I'm like, this guy has an eidetic memory.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to have some sort of superpower, the way he would remember all the facts. And we used to say on the podcast at the end, I used to say it's through intelligent and respectful dialogue that we create positive change, and that was the thing he did. Yeah. What did it do? You said you didn't follow him a lot, but then with all this, I mean, what have you learned about him that you appreciate so much and that has inspired you?
That he was a revivalist of the original idea of the founding fathers of America. See, Charlie did something that is by no means new. Charlie, what he did, he took a very, very old principle, which is just mingling with people in public, debating with people in public, and he took that to social media. And then, of course, it was all either political or religious, which is very controversial in our day-to-day life. That's why he got so much traction and ultimately why he got assassinated. So, what Charlie did was even used back in the old ancient Greece, where they had stone thrones, and whether you were a political leader, whether you were a politician, a storyteller, any type of traveler with any type of news, bring a new idea to the table, philosopher, you would come to this stone table, or stone throne, and you would say your idea, and you'd speak it loudly to the crowd, and crowds would gather around these stone tables to hear these new ideas. This is how ideas spread. This is how people got their information in the old days, because they didn't have social media or any type of news, right? So, and then that's ironically enough where we get the idiom where people throw like tomatoes at bad performances. That came from ancient Greece, where when you were speaking on the throne and you were a political leader and you're like, hey, I'm going to install a new tax on this town, people wouldn't like that. So they get whatever vegetable or fruit that's rotten that they had and they'd throw it at you on stage.
Right.
And that's where it came from. But the whole idea is that Charlie just took that idea of what they did in ancient Greece and throughout multiple centuries of how they spread their information, and he just revitalized it. He put a camera in front of it.
Right.
Started debating the old-fashioned way. And that's why I call him a revivalist. So
And he's also started a revival, I think, among young people for marriage, for religion. I mean, I've seen so many testimonies where people, they'd never gone to church and now they were going to go to church. I mean, there's been this kind of awakening, I think, from this. It's been powerful for sure.
what have you, as a political representative, thought about the Charlie Kirk incident and your whole takeaways from it?
Myself?
Yeah.
Wow. There's just not enough time in this podcast for that. It hit home really close for me because, as you know, Oskaloosa made national news. And
Did it? What for?
you know very well. So we know that a teacher there said some very pointed things, 3 words that rocked the community. And because of that, the school board, the staff, the school district as a whole received a lot of attention, a lot of pressure. And it was the insensitive response to the assassination that brought that. And so I spent a lot of time just dealing with that, just talking to people about their thoughts and about their concerns. And of course, met with people at the school, went to the school board meeting, things like that. And so it was very, very personal and very close for me because what it ignited in our small community was pretty significant. So.
And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, when it comes to, what was your take on it? What do you believe about it? How did you feel about it?
Well, I think put most simply, you could go, there's so many avenues to talk about here, but most importantly is that violence is simply not the answer to problems or disagreements. And that was one thing that I wanted to make very clear in my community and with all the elected officials. So we put out a public statement that said that we intend to work together for peaceful resolution with dialogue and never using violence. And so no matter whether you agreed with Charlie Kirk or you disagreed with him or you didn't even know anything about him, we can all agree that political violence is not a way to solve problems. And so I spent a lot of time with that. And at this particular event, it's rocked all of us in many different ways. And for me, one thing that we spend a lot of time doing is just talking about ideas in our house. And that's what this
I
whole...
can tell.
Yeah. we are always bouncing off ideas and just wrestling with them and mulling over them and challenging ourselves. And that's what this whole thing is. It's a clash of ideas. There's been clearly an assault on the family, on traditional values, on faith, on freedom, on the very idea of capitalism and what it means to be American. All those things you've talked about at length with many different people that you've met with and even on this podcast. And so as we just all wrestle with ideas, that's what's been going on in our home and that I've been doing a lot with the people in my community. And I do know for sure that this event has been significant in propelling his ideas to the forefront of everybody's conversations, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been a couple of years since you've been on the podcast.
Yes,
I think the last time you were at the Capitol. We did a Zoom call. And it was kind of a update this week at the Capitol update. But the first episode, or the first time I had you on, wasn't terribly long after you were elected. I think it was the first session you were in. And I think your story is pretty amazing. If you wouldn't mind just, sharing why you got into politics in the first place.
Yeah, well, William here is my youngest. He's the baby of the family. And I
Me
was
too.
Amen.
Youngest of 8.
Baby brothers.
Yeah, I only have 3.
Okay.
Didn't have 8. I'd probably still be at it and not in politics if that were the case. But my children were all close to adulthood at this time, and really my pathway into politics simply came from a single event that happened, and that was the Pella Pool incident, where a 15-year-old girl who believed she was a boy went topless at the pool. And as you can imagine, a conservative community, tight-knit, close community of Pella was pretty rocked by that. And of course, the pool is owned by the city. And so I went to my first ever, I'm sorry to have to admit that, I was 48 at the time, 48, 47, somewhere in there, close to 50. And I went to my first city council meeting, and I just advise people not to wait that long. They should be engaged a lot sooner than that.
Yeah.
But life happens. You have children to raise, you have supper to make, you have laundry to do, and it's never ending. And especially, I am a homeschooler too. I homeschooled all my children. When you live a lifestyle of homeschooling, it's never ending. It's a lifestyle choice. And so there's always things going on. So yeah, I went to that meeting, city council, and it was wall to wall people. There was an overflow crowd outside listening to the meeting through a speakerphone. And it was a long meeting because, you get your time to go up there, and you're 2 minutes, I think it was maybe 3 minutes. And lots of people spoke until that beeper went off and said their piece. And at the end of the night, the city council voted to take no further action.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Did they give their reasoning for that?
Well, at that time, gender identity was in the Civil Rights Code, and it was apparent they feared a lawsuit because of that. And of course, this was a new situation for them too. They didn't quite know how to respond to it. And for me personally, I was shocked. I went home and I remember thinking that night, I don't understand. I thought elected people were supposed to respond to the public concerns, and they really didn't. And of course, as time went on, a group of us began to ask a lot more questions, and we began to kind of come together and meet frequently. And we decided we started to notice, things, the libraries, the books, like this wider picture. It wasn't just, this random girl who went topless at the pool because she thought she was a boy. We started to notice like a lot of sexualized things happening, with the libraries and things. This was, 4 years ago. And we weren't the only ones. Lots of people started to notice that. So we began to organize, and we went to the Capitol and did this thing that we call lobbying for the first time. Right. And we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how to get into the Capitol. We didn't know where to park. I mean, all of us in that group were new to getting involved in the political arena. And I'm sure I hope some of your listeners are in that place too, because I want to encourage them that even if it's new to you and you don't really know what to do, just do something and start getting curious and asking those questions and show up.
Yeah, we've been blessed. We have, Iowans for Freedom, and we have a lot of people that will respond to our calls to action with emails and some help with lobbying. And I always tell them that we have to support our legislators when they are standing for freedom, when they're on the front lines, because you guys always hear from the opposition. And they also need to hear from people that support them as well. And then sometimes they need to be reminded that, hey, this is not okay, and this is the direction we'd love to see things go, and here's why, and all those things too. So yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad that they didn't do anything, because then you stepped into action, right?
You know what? It wasn't just me. That's the beauty of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that event, we have people on the city council now. We have people on library boards. We have people that are involved in other organizations that are like nonprofit, all from Pella and the surrounding community. And so they got engaged in their thinking, and this is how I encourage everybody to think too, is think long term, pace yourself, because it's a heavy challenge, and there's a lot to try to take on, a lot to try to keep up with, especially right now in Iowa. We got the governor's race, and we got all these things getting positioned and things moving around. And it's hard to keep up, but pace yourself and think down the road, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And I'm just thankful that I struggled to get into politics simply because it was the Lord he had to tug at my heart quite a bit. And I resisted, and because I didn't understand why I would ever do such a thing like that. It was never a goal of mine. William knows that for sure.
Right.
I mean,
You're sitting there shaking your head.
I don't know that I ever really knew.
In agreement. So what was it like watching your mom go through all this? And
we had no,
if you could move the microphone just a little bit closer.
We had no idea what anything in politics was. I mean, did you even know who the governor was?
Yes, of course. Okay. I didn't know that.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
I'm with you. I mean, I didn't know who the legislators were when I first got into this, and now I know everybody, it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But that's a fascinating point that I think we really need some type of mentors. Everybody needs a mentor to get into the political sphere, because if she had not been in the position she's in now, then I would have no clue about anything political. I could probably tell you what the difference between a representative and a senator is, and the governor, how anything works, if it had not been for her getting in and then pretty much just me learning everything through her. And it really reminded me, like, I've taken 2 government classes in high school, passed them both, and yet I still know nothing about government. I know nothing about politics.
It's one thing to just read about it and another to walk it.
Exactly.
It's been incredibly educational, learning how a bill becomes a law, and then lobbying and helping a bill become a law. And something just popped into my mind, though, I got to share. I think one of the titles of the first interview I did with you that I was going to use, I don't think I used it. It was going to be from pissed off parent to policymaker.
It is.
And I'll have to go back and see if I can find it. It might be on Rumble or something.
Yes. You didn't use that title?
I might have. I don't know. I was a little more brazen back then. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And many other legislators just stepped into what they're doing. And I don't think people really understand this. And I always try to make the point, it's a thankless job. You're barely paid, and it's really tough. And it's a sacrifice. And so we have to be thankful for the folks that'll step up and do it. That doesn't mean they don't have to be held accountable, but we have to support them too when they're, working hard and doing the right things.
And it is true, Oliver. We get a lot of criticism.
Oh yeah.
And it gets weary. It gets very weary. And but what I appreciate is that people, like, for example, in my district, Jefferson County Central Committee reached out to me a couple of weeks ago, and they said, how can we come alongside you? We'd like to meet with you. We're going to bring a couple of members, and we want to sit down and we want to get to know you better. And of course, they knew me, but we never really just sat down outside of a meeting time or an event, just over coffee, and to just actually have a conversation. So a couple of them came over, and we did. And the beauty of that is they can see you on a personal level, and they can know that a politician is still a human being,
right,
and they still have families and heavy loads, and like it's okay. And I would encourage everybody to just remember that, and to know who know them by their first name, have their phone number, so that you can reach out to them and that it's an actual relationship.
Yeah.
That goes so far in terms of if you have questions about like why did they vote this way on a bill, you can them, just call them up and say, hey, I don't get it. Like, why did you vote that way? Because we all have. It's a hard path. I think most legislators would admit there are bills they probably regret voting yes on, or maybe even voting no on. Like if they could change their vote now, they might just do that. And sometimes how we voted may not be very clear, or like the why we voted a certain way may not be very clear because you can't see that on the on just from the numbers. But for example, I had this one bill about THC when we were trying to regulate THC, and it was we had the numbers of what we wanted to be in those beverages and things like that, and it was low. Representative Holt was working on that, and he was doing such a fantastic job. And then the bill got watered down, and it got raised to a much higher level. And I was so upset about that. I was just so mad because you were trying to put some limits to it so that we don't have some of the stories and the problems that we were hearing from people with taking their first drink of these things. And I ended up voting no on that, which made it look like I supported no regulation on THC, which was the case, but it was a last minute watered down thing. And I wanted what we had earlier. That was better.
Okay.
So, you have those kinds of instances where people just don't always understand.
Yeah. And I've seen that. There was a bill, I think, that I saw that was vetoed by the governor. I think it was to legalize synthesized psilocybin for medicinal purposes. And it was just a little blip on the radar, and I thought, I wonder what that was about, and I should talk to Representative or Senator Campbell about it. But do you know about that? I'm just curious because I know there's a lot of medicinal purposes to psilocybin, especially for PTSD, and it works on neural pathways and all these things. I don't know the science. If I had a helper, I'd have him, Google it for me. But there's a lot of medicinal purposes. I remember Representative Shipley years ago, on the debate floor, pontificating about the benefits. What happened there? Do you know?
If I remember right, the governor's comments had to do with federal regulation and letting some of that stuff catch up to what we know now and things like that. So it had it wasn't so much that she just necessarily disagreed with it, but there were still some things that had to come alongside that before it could be done. I don't remember the exact details since it's been a while since she vetoed that, but it had to do with outside forces like federal stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you'll have to follow that up with somebody on the details. But we did veto that, and that wasn't the only one.
Right. Yeah. Representative Holt wants to get back on and talk about that, the eminent domain bill. That was interesting. I mean, I have a men's group. We meet once a month, conservative business owners and community leaders. And we had, at one meeting, I had Senator Alon's and I had Senator Green.
Oh, wow.
Right? And Representative Nordman, Representative Gelbach. And we had an intelligent and respectful dialogue. It was probably the first time those guys had sat down at the table together and we talked about eminent domain. It was a long conversation.
Yes.
And they did a great job. I mean, they were very respectful of each other and had a good conversation. And people watching should know what it's about, but it was about the veto of the eminent domain bill, basically, and the things that went into that. And I knew you were a big proponent of the property rights issue.
Yes, and that's one of the topics that I never expected getting in. I got into politics to fight for the innocence of children, to protect children.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that coming. I did not see a carbon pipeline battle coming down the path, but it is. And for me personally, Oliver, it's a little bit more than just eminent domain, because you have an issue here that is a global issue. You have net zero. You have, you're aiming for reducing your carbon footprint and all this stuff that's coming from on a global level down to us. And essentially what you see is the UN sustainable goals, 17 sustainable goals that are being pressed down. This is the manifestation of that agenda in Iowa. This is what it looks like. And even though this is not going to win me any brownie points with certain groups of people, but
Sure.
Even though we are an ag state and we love ethanol, and that's one of our big ways that our state is supported, this whole idea of the carbon pipeline is simply built on lies. This lie that we need to reduce the temperature of the earth by 1.5 degrees Celsius, and yet it's being sold as a market. It's being sold as a market for increasing, corn production and stuff like that. And so I understand why people want it, because they see a market for ethanol and a demand there. But the truth is, I don't want to see Iowa build its pathway and its future on lies. And the carbon pipeline, the fact that you're taking carbon dioxide and you're putting it in the ground, and that's going to help our state be better, there's more to the story.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
I'm sure we'll have more conversations about that.
Yes,
on the
yes.
podcast.
You take that up with Holt, because you could.
Yeah, I'll get him back here. He's so fun to have on the show. I mean, he's so animated and he knows his stuff.
Yes, he does.
Doesn't mind telling it how it is. He's that.
Yep.
He's a Marine through and through. So, William, what was your education like as being homeschooled?
As being homeschooled, I was a little bit different. I did half and half homeschooled, half public schooled, and so I took some courses in like the afternoon through a legitimate high school, and then the other courses I just did at home. A lot of self-learning, and I think that's key here. Is that Helena, when she entered politics, all power to her, had to step aside from focusing on me as her primary obligation to be able to focus on school. But at that time, that was the exact time I was developing my mind that I didn't need babysitting with homeschooling. And that's what I think can make or break a homeschool person, individual, is if they have or do not have the ability to what's the word I'm looking
regulate?
for here?
Self-discipline?
Self-motivation.
Yeah, to develop themselves on their own. If they can do that, then homeschooling will absolutely be the right decision. How old were you
when your mom ran for
14,
office?
15?
14, yeah.
What do you think?
A little bit closer to 16. And I remember telling him, when I won, you were going into your junior year. Okay, so your junior and senior year, I remember telling him, you're going to be on your own. You're going to make or break your future here, and I need you to make the decisions, and I need you to step it up, because I wasn't going to be around. I mean, I have half of the year, but January through May, I mean, he's old enough to, when you're a junior and senior in high school, you can be independent, but I wasn't there guiding his studies anymore and enabling and helping him. I had to step out, and he really, I would have to say, I joke with him a little bit, because he floundered for a couple of months, as young people do. Maybe played too many video games for a little while, and then he just, I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but he realized at one point that, like, this is my future. I can make it how I want to be it. And then he just took off. I remember when my daughter was 3 years old, I wanted to do this thing that we call homeschooling. I remember looking at her and thinking, God, please don't let me ruin her.
Right.
Because you have this precious little being and you're fully responsible for it, and you just don't want to do anything wrong. And now here I am. I'm done. Like, it's over. Like, they're all official legal adults now. And
What was
yeah.
what was your what were your favorite subjects and your self-study? How did you do that? What did it look like?
This is fascinating because it wasn't so much homeschool in the sense that I had specific classes that I needed to get done. Of course I did. Everybody does. English, math, of course. What I really set me apart in my mindset in homeschooling is that I was able to learn what I wanted to learn. And that is such a key thing, is that we are pushed as high schoolers upon us what everybody else wants us to learn. And that's okay to a point. I understand that. You got to be you got to be at a level of human nature to be able to do, basic math and learn and speak the basic human language. I get that. But we don't allow our youth to be able to search and learn about what they want to learn about at least the public school level. And that was the difference at the homeschool level, is that I was then able to learn about everything I wanted to learn about and put my time into something I was genuinely interested in.
What did you want to learn about?
Business, music, and history, politics. Since she got into it, world of difference in my interest in that subject.
So what's the music portion? What are you doing?
Music, that would be, so I always played piano my whole life, but I was always taught by a classical musician, and they have a way of teaching you by the book.
Right.
And so I took it into my own hands. My teacher taught me how to learn sheet music for 8 years, but never taught me music theory.
I have a piano out there, so before you leave, I'm going to make you play.
I'll play something that'll blow your mind.
All right. I believe it, man. You play the guitar? I've got a guitar hanging there.
Not the guitar, no. But
so you taught yourself to play less traditionally.
Exactly. Music theory, learning about how you can actually transmit emotion through music instead of just learning how to play what everybody else has played, learning to compose, develop something new.
Right. Awesome.
Again, going back to being a progenitor, developing something new, creating something, starting something.
Progenitor. I'm going to borrow that. I think I'm a progenitor.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
What about history? What were your favorite topics, eras? What did you study there? What did you?
Ooh. Favorite topics?
I mean,
and
obviously,
eras.
you just gave us a lesson on the idiom and the chair in Greece and all those things.
Yeah, ancient history. I studied a lot of Persia, so a lot of the way back when era. A lot of Jesus's times with the Roman Empire, so that's kind of the same era there. And I would say outside of that, it would be a lot of either the UK's history or American history, especially in the founding of America, how all that came together. I love studying governments and how governments can come to the shape what form of governments that you have and how that develops as well.
Is there anything like more like something you wouldn't? I know you wouldn't get a lot of that in public school, but is there? You've got music, you've got history, you've got business. You said business. What type of business did you study?
This went back to when I was 17 years old. I had watched some videos by an individual by the name of Ayman Ghazi. I can hardly remember his name now. And, today I don't really like the individual, but back then he was posting YouTube videos about you as a man need to step up your game, that your parents are relying on you to be able to take care of them, just like in Japanese culture.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We all want to hear that, right?
William's going to take care of you someday.
That is a
I
goal.
hope my
That
kids
is a
will
goal.
take care of me someday.
In every matter,
Right,
financial
right.
matter and hospitality. So,
Yeah.
your question was, what was that exactly?
I think we were talking about business, but
Business.
how about
Yes.
values? I mean, how about values? This is the most important thing. I can tell as a young man that you've been searching for, how to be a better young man, how to be a man, what values do you find, or how did you build your value system, and who are your heroes and whatnot?
I built it around purpose. All my life, I could not stand to live mediocre. The 9-to-5 job in a factory, doing repetition after repetition after repetition, was so dull that I cannot stand doing that. Seriously, take it to a very, very high level of doing anything else but that.
Right.
And that is what forced me to develop purpose and forced me to develop value. Going back to Ayman Gaji, the guy who I just mentioned about, him along with other of my mentors who would be, Hamza at that time, even though Hamza was he believed in, he's an Islamic.
Right.
And, he's a Muslim. And I don't agree with his beliefs in that way, but certain ideas he has about developing yourself as a man are so attractive and so purpose. It would go back to not necessarily I do want to be somebody, but it's about not being nobody.
Right.
If that made any sense, that was kind of confusing.
That's
No,
right.
no.
No,
My-
that makes sense. Yeah.
I have a couple really great mentors who I've studied. And I think it's great to have mentors online, but it's also great to have mentors in person because they do two different things. One can speak to you in a way that is general, and the other, which is in person, can speak to you specifically to yourself.
Right.
So my mentors online would be people like, believe it or not, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, most of us think of him as just a silly actor. But this guy had one of the most successful careers that you could ever imagine. He started out in Austria, and what did he do? He developed himself into the world's greatest bodybuilder ever alive by the age of 18 or 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he worked multiple jobs and just invested himself in this pathway until he was able to, seriously, have an entire event named after him. What is it? The Schwarzenegger competition, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't remember what the exact name of the bodybuilding event is, but he was so good at it and such an icon, they named an entire event after him. And he got title after title and dominated his field. And this is where I strongly believe this is what makes me so attracted to his style of leadership. As soon as he mastered his industry, he transitioned into business, or then he transitioned into becoming an actor. And then he goes about business and acting and playing in some of the most iconic movies in existence. We have what? The Predator, the Terminator 1 and 2.
You got to go back. Conan the Barbarian.
That too.
That's one of my all-time favorites. I watched a video of him. I don't know. I think there was a documentary, and he was talking about how everybody's depressed, and how I don't have time for that. Get up,
Yes.
get out and work, go do something productive,
I love his accent.
Yeah. I wish I could do it. I can't. I can do, I'll be back.
That's right. That's right. But the whole point is that he masters an industry. He gets a title. He achieves the level of success that most men can only dream of. Bam. Then he transitions into business. Then he transitions into an acting career. And then he transitions into a political career too. He holds the title of governor for California. The biggest state.
Yeah, the guy is just amazing.
But every single category he just excels in.
You know,
Masters.
and I think I think it comes back to hard work and belief. He always believed he was going to do it no matter what. And he was always willing to put in the long, long hours. And that's one of the things that I was really impressed about with Charlie Kirk was he would start work at 5 a.m., work till 11 p.m., never stop. And you see people like that, that just do it. And anything in life that you want to accomplish, you can do if you're willing to put in the work. And success leaves clues, and successful people are always helpful. Not every one of them, but you can always find somebody that will be glad to share their knowledge with you and how they did it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel for sure.
That's right.
Well, I said 20 minutes. We're almost an hour here.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
What's next for you, William?
I think some big decisions. I think when you're as young as I am, every decision you make is major. And it is really hard because you have no experience in these decisions. But if you decide to join the military, that's a 8-year decision that you are bound to now. You decide to go to college, that's a 4-year decision that you are bound to. That tuition is going to stay with you for a while. You got to be making these big decisions so young. So what I'm at, the decisions that I have to make is the decisions that every young man has to make. What do you want to be? Because you can be anything in America. Again, going back to hard work. Hard work and doing it different mindset. Most millionaires, most billionaires are college dropouts. CEOs didn't even pass high school. The innovators of our lives are by society labeled the most unsuccessful failures until their idea takes off. So that's my decision now, and everyone's decision at my age. Where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? You get one choice. Kind of. In a way, going back to Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was a lot of different things in his lifetime. But it's a really big decision at what I'm at right now.
Right.
So.
Yeah, definitely. It feels that way for sure, I'm sure. And you have time to do something and go all in, and then at some point, like you said, Arnold Schwarzenegger, change direction if you want to or need to, or after you've succeeded. And I have no doubt you'll be successful. How proud are you of this guy?
Very, very proud, and I was, I came up in the 80s and 90s, and the idea then was that your children have to go to college to prove that you were, a good parent. And so I definitely made sure that my oldest, my daughter, went to a good 4-year liberal arts college, and she graduated cum laude, and she's a studious one also. And then my second one, he doesn't really like, he's not such a bookworm. Let's just put it that way. But I made him go to college. He got his degree. And then by the time I got to my third year, I'm like, what do you want to do? I guess I should ask you that. And my whole approach to, college versus, what they really want to do for their life has changed in our own, and just my 3 children. And I imagine that happens with a lot of parents as their understanding and their own development comes alongside, it just evolves. And so we're seeing a lot of people nowadays who, are graduating with those degrees that don't translate to jobs that can support them. And so it's
Yeah.
not being pushed the same way it was when I graduated, and then in my mindset thinking, my kids have to do this. But instead, we're seeing such a development in other parts of workforce. And then, of course, the American dream is that you can do and be anything you want to be. And you just need to work hard at that. You need to be consistent. You need to ask lots of questions. You need to find good people, align yourself with leaders, and find that person that you want to be like. And then begin to model yourself after them and learn from them. And I appreciate that William has been so driven. I would call that. He's a very driven young man. And without that, I mean, I'd have to be out there, the mother going, come on.
Which a lot of mothers are doing right now.
Absolutely. And they still need to. I mean, you don't want to leave them to their own devices sometimes.
My aunt, she also had, I think 7 kids.
Wow.
And she would always give them, when they graduated from high school, their first and last month's rent. And you're on your own.
Wow.
And they were all successful. But, I've done that same thing my whole life. I mean, my learning, I went to college, but I didn't. I mean, I went to DMAC for a couple of years. Then I went to Iowa, and I was studying health, exercise science. And my dad passed away, and I ended up dropping out. And I always loved psychology. I worked for a human services organization for a couple of years, and I was a group home manager with guys with Down syndrome and disabilities. And my favorite job on the planet, but I was still paying student loans. And so, and I grew up in construction. So I went and I went and worked in construction with one of my family's companies for 6 months. And then I started my own business. And I studied everything Tony Robbins put out. I mean, just all the programs. I went to every in-person program, weeks at a time. I would go do one of his in-person programs and immerse myself in that type of learning. I took a month off work one time and spent it in Winter Park, Colorado, studying neurolinguistic programming, which is a science of the mind, basically learning. It's a psychology kind of, why every psychology works. But I learned in bursts of immersion outside of the college system, and read hundreds and hundreds of books, Good to Great and Man's Search for Meaning and things like that. But I hope that we're going in the direction where traditional schooling is going to change, because it just hasn't, like you said, you have 50% of the kids drop out, then half of them don't get jobs that require degrees. They rake up $50,000 to $100,000 in debt. And I know kids in the trades who they get out of high school, they're in a journeyman position, and within 4 years they're making 6 figures, and they're a journeyman, and they've got a house and a car and no college debt, and loving their life because of the trades, which we've kind of poo-pooed on for the last decade. I hope those come back as well. But anyway, lots to think about, especially with the next session coming up. What is on the agenda for the next session for you? What are the big things?
Oh, well, I think for myself, we got gender identity out of the Civil Rights Code this past year. And I've been asking myself, okay, so now what? I mean, that was kind of my why I got in. And on one hand, we've come so far in what we've done legislatively. We've looked at the sex acts books at schools, the bathrooms, the transgender surgeries and things like that. And yet we have so far to go. And so for me personally, I've been asking myself how I want to transition this into more of a holistic policy idea. And I'm asking, if I believe that families are the cornerstone of a community, and they make strong communities and they make strong schools when you have a strong family, then how does that translate to policy right here in Iowa at this time? Because I have some ideas in my mind, and certainly I'm not the first to ask that in the last many decades or even a couple hundred years. Like, how can we continue to incentivize and build strong families? But with the current state of America and the challenges that we're facing and some of the lies that that they believe, what does that look like now, and how can I be a part of that? And that's a really big, broad question I'm asking myself, because it requires a lot of learning for me to understand, well, in order to come up with good solutions, we first of all need to be able to identify the problems accurately. So where are the problems that are tearing apart families that I can address legislatively? Where are they? What departments are they in? What pieces of law are they in? And how we just have to find those and then figure out how to fix those so that families can be stable and whole. They can make a healthy income. They can have a vibrant faith life. They can provide for the children in all the ways that the children need to be provided for, spiritually, physically, psychologically, like emotionally, all of that way. I do believe that if we are a child-centered society, like if we put children first in our homes and in our communities and our neighborhoods and in our schools ultimately, then those children will grow up to be well-rounded adults. But when we put the needs of adults first and over children, that's when we get problems that we're facing now. We have to make sacrifices. The adults are the ones that are supposed to make the sacrifices to make our homes better and our communities better. So I know that that's a very broad way to answer your question, but of course, we have eminent domain and the pipeline issue again. We have taxes. Everybody wants to talk about property taxes.
I wish we had 2 more hours.
Oh gosh!
But I know you guys have an hour and a half drive ahead of you. But
so there's many important issues. For me, I'm going to see a continuation of the last 3 years. But I'm looking at a 30,000 foot level here. If I'm going to do this legislation, how can I make it so that in 10 years and 20 years, when I look back at what I've done, how did I make families stronger? Because that's the root. That's the root of so many of our problems that we're always talking about: mental health, especially mental health, the schools, childcare, and then of course foster care, and on. Like, so many of that would be taken away. It'd clear up. It wouldn't be a problem, and we wouldn't have to address it if we go back to some of these root issues and fix that. But it's a long-term goal. It's going to take a while, because the family has been under attack for many decades, and we see the evidence of that now.
Yes, we do, and that's probably a good place to end on. And I want to thank you both for joining me. This has been a great conversation.
Well, and thank you, Oliver, for having us. It was a bit spontaneous, but what a treat.
It was.
Yeah. I tried to throw together some notes, but I don't think I looked at them once. And man, you are on the right track.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you having me on. I hope we can do it again in the future.
Yeah, let's do it. Pull that mic closer.
I keep doing that.
We'll fix it. Yeah, so I'm just blown away by how smart you are. I mean, I always tell people these days, there's so many homeschooling resources. There's so many.
Oh yes.
I know so many people that are doing that now. William's a testament to how great that can go. I really, I appreciate you coming, and let's do it again sometime. I'd love to hear about.
All right.
Yeah, maybe we can just sit down here and chat.
All right. Well, thank you,
all right.
Oliver.
Yeah. God bless you both. Thank you so much
you.
for joining us. Yep. We'll see you next time.